In all the noise around American politics these days, it's easy to forget that the retirement of a Supreme Court judge, the appointment of a replacement, can genuinely change the lives of Americans for generations.
I am today announcing my intention to nominate United States Circuit Judge Anthony Kennedy.
It's 1987. President Reagan nominates Anthony Kennedy to the Supreme Court. A conservative, yes, but seen as the consensus nominee at the time. Sided with the court's liberals over the years on gay marriage, for example. 30 years on, time to bow out. And with his retirement, fears that his moderating influence bows out with him. The president announcing Kennedy's retirement in Fargo, North Dakota, last night.
Justice Anthony Kennedy, a very special guy also, just announced a little while ago his retirement from the United States Supreme Court. Great man. And I'm very honored that he chose to do it during my term in office because he felt confident in me to make the right choice and carry on his great legacy. That's why he did it.
The reason the crowd love it, it gives their man a chance to appoint a conservative judge who could shift the balance of the court to the right for decades to come. And for many Trump supporters, that means one thing: more restrictive legislation around abortion. This law professor used to work with the outgoing judge.
He was a conservative who was moderate or even liberal on certain issues. So on those issues, you can expect there to be a fairly substantial shift. Abortion rights is one, affirmative action is another.
The Republicans are now in a race to get the new judge in place before the primaries in November, in case Democrats win a majority in the Senate and veto the appointment. The vacancy has ignited activism across the board, particularly among pro-choice groups.
Millions of people have marched in the streets. They have flooded town halls. They have jammed up congressional phone lines, all to protect our health and rights. And if you thought people were engaged now, this has really sparked it into overdrive.
In the States, Supreme Court appointments are always politically charged affairs. The next one, though, particularly high voltage.
Well, joining me from Washington is Catherine Glenn Foster, president of Americans United for Life. How confident are you now that the pendulum is going to swing and the Roe v. Wade ruling that stops states banning abortion will be overturned?
Well, first of all, what we have to remember is that if and when Roe v. Wade is overturned, that the issue would simply return to the states. That would not mean that abortion is suddenly illegal nationwide or banned nationwide. It would simply return the issue to the states, where the states would be able to determine what law would be best for their own state, following the principles of federalism.
And are you sure it will happen?
With that said, I do expect that it will happen, because when even Justice Ginsburg, one of the most liberal, pro-choice justices on the Supreme Court, has repeatedly publicly said that she believes that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, that in fact it went too far, too fast, and that it was poorly decided, I do believe that Roe v. Wade will be overturned at some point.
I mean, the last time a Supreme Court justice was nominated by President Obama, the Senate felt it was wrong to go ahead with an approval hearing in an election year. Isn't that a precedent that should be respected again this year, and that we should wait until the midterms are over so that the people can have their say on this before the president?
You know, the 2016 versus the 2018 nominations are two very different things. In 2016, that was a presidential election year, whereas in 2018, it's not. It's those midterm elections. So it is a very different thing. Well, when we're talking about who is doing the nominating, when the person who is going to be nominating the next justice, a justice who that we hope will be constitutionally conservative, who will look to the Constitution and our nation's founding documents as their highest calling and their duty, rather than to a poorly reasoned precedent, when that person is going to be changing, that's when you start thinking, well, it seems like perhaps we should wait and find out if the next person, if the next president would nominate someone different. Whereas at the midterms, the president is not changing. It's only certain senators or representatives who may be changing.
Yeah, I mean, and they'll be the ones who get to decide whether this nomination goes ahead or not, won't they? But I mean, the question is, if, as you say, this becomes a sort of a matter of putting social values back to the states, and some states will decide that they allow abortion and some states will stop it. Some states have already decided that that's what they will do if Roe v. Wade is overturned. You will have an America in which women are traveling vast differences, distances to get abortions. That rape victims in one state may have to travel at great expense and distress to another state to get the termination that they want. And is that really the country you want?
Well, in America, we believe and adhere to the principles of federalism, where we do believe that states can make many of their own laws, and that should be the way that we proceed. So with that said, we need to look to the Constitution and determine exactly what rights are there under the Constitution. When it comes to abortion and Roe v. Wade, again, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, then it goes back to the states. Abortion would not be broadly banned or illegal nationwide, and in fact, in most states, it would currently be legal. There are very, very few states that would have laws that would ban or very significantly restrict abortions. So it would simply return the issue to the states instead of still being propped up by this poorly reasoned precedent from back in 1973.